The church is cold. Elena Vasquez stands at the altar in a second-hand white dress, hands shaking, eyes dry because she used up all her tears 3 days ago when they told her she had no choice. Across from her stands Damien Crowe, tall, dark-suited, expressionless, a man who has never once looked at her like she is a person. The priest stumbles through the words. The guests are all Crowe's men. No one is there for Elena. She is 22, an orphan raised by her late uncle's family, and the moment her uncle died, his debt became her collar. The Crowe family owns that debt. Damien's father arranged this marriage to absorb the Vasquez name's last remaining business license, a legal loophole worth millions. Elena knows this. She knew it walking down the aisle. So when the officiant says, "Sign here," Elena pulls out a folded paper from inside her bouquet and slides it across the registry table. Damien's jaw tightens. His lawyer lunges forward, but Elena speaks first, quietly, clearly, without flinching. "I added one clause." The room goes silent. Damien Crowe, the most feared man in the Eastern Syndicate, stares at the paper, and for the first time in his life, something catches him completely off guard. Damien reads the clause once, then again. His lawyer whispers in his ear. His second-in-command, Marco, shifts uncomfortably near the door. The clause is simple but devastating. If Elena Vasquez Crowe is ever publicly humiliated, harmed, isolated, or treated as anything less than a full legal spouse, the marriage contract becomes void, and all business holdings transferred under the Vasquez name revert to a blind trust controlled solely by Elena. She had help writing it. A retired judge. An old friend of her mother's. She called in the only favor she had left in the world. Damien looks up at her. She looks back at him. No fear, no apology, he signs. But the way his pen hits the paper tells her everything. This is not over. It has barely begun. Elena arrives at the Crowe estate, a massive, cold manor on the edge of the city with one suitcase. The staff stares. Marco shows her to a room in the east wing, far from the main house, clearly designed to isolate her without technically doing so. Smart, just inside the clause's edge. She notices immediately. That night at dinner, Damien doesn't come. A plate is sent to her room. She eats alone, then takes out a notebook and begins writing down every small slight, every calculated distance, every way they are trying to wear her down without breaking the contract. She is keeping score. What she doesn't notice is that a small camera blinks in the corner of the hallway outside her door, and someone in this house is watching her write. At the first formal family dinner 3 days later, Elena meets Damien's mother, Celeste Crowe, elegant, razor-tongued, and furious that this marriage happened at all. Celeste had a different bride in mind. Sofia Ferrantes, daughter of a rival family, whose marriage to Damien would have sealed a peace deal worth far more than the Vasquez license. Elena didn't know this. She sits at the long table and feels the shift in the room. She isn't just an inconvenience to Damien. She is a threat to an entire political arrangement. Celeste leans in and says sweetly, "You really should eat more, dear. You look like you came from nothing." Elena smiles back just as sweetly. "I did, and I'm still here." Damien, sitting at the head of the table, looks up from his plate for the first time. Something flickers across his face, too fast to read, but Marco sees it. Elena finds the notebook missing from her room. She says nothing, acts normal, but she has already figured out who took it, the young housemaid, Irina, who changes her sheets and reports to Marco. Elena is not angry. She is calculating. She begins a second notebook, this one filled with fake observations, harmless complaints, staged vulnerability. She feeds it to Irina deliberately. Meanwhile, she starts building a real map of the estate, who has access where, what deals are discussed in which rooms, and most importantly, what Damien is actually afraid of losing. She finds her first answer by accident when she overhears a phone call through a cracked study door. Damien is not talking about business. He is talking about a person, a name she doesn't recognize yet, but the fear in his voice is real. The name is Lena. Elena spends 3 days trying to find out who Lena is without asking a single person in the house. She goes through old newspapers in the estate library, cross-checks dates, and finally finds a 6-year-old obituary in a regional paper. Lena Crowe, Damien's younger sister, died in a car accident that the official record says was a tragedy, but the date of death lines up with a war between the Crowe family and a rival syndicate. Elena stares at the page. She doesn't feel triumph. She feels something more complicated. This man who forced her into a contract marriage is also a man carrying something heavy and hidden. She closes the newspaper carefully and puts it back. She is not ready to use this yet, but she knows now Damien Crowe has a wound, and wounds make people human. That scares her more than his power ever did. Damien is required to bring Elena to a charity gala, their first public appearance as a married couple. Celeste tries to have Elena's dress, accidentally, sent to the wrong room, leaving her with nothing appropriate to wear an hour before the car arrives. Elena walks downstairs in a simple black dress she packed herself, understated, elegant, and completely her own. At the gala, 3 journalists photograph them. Damien keeps his distance, but stays within the contractual definition of publicly treating her as a spouse. He introduces her once, flatly, to a city councilman. Elena smiles, shakes hands, and in the same breath mentions to the councilman that she studied urban development policy in college, which is true. And within 20 minutes she is in a genuine conversation with 4 city officials that Damien has been trying to get a meeting with for months. Damien watches from across the room. Marco leans in and says, "She's good." Damien says nothing. Damien comes to her room that night. Not romantically, he stands in the doorway, arms crossed, and says simply, "How do you know Alderman Reyes?" Elena tells him the truth. She interned at the city planning office during university. He stares at her like he is recalculating something. Then he says, "I need you at the trade summit next week." Not a request. She looks at him for a long moment. "I'll go," she says, "if you have dinner with me tomorrow, at the table, like people." He almost refuses. She can see it. Then he says, "Fine." He leaves. She closes the door and sits on the edge of her bed. Her hands are shaking again, but this time it's not fear. She doesn't know what it is yet. That's the problem. They eat at the long dining table, just the 2 of them, in near silence for the first 10 minutes. Then Elena asks him one question. "What did you want to be before all of this?" It's the kind of question no one asks a man like Damien Crowe. He puts his fork down. She waits. He says, "A structural engineer." She blinks. He says it the way someone says something they've never said out loud before, like testing whether air holds the weight of it. She says, "Bridges or buildings?" He says, "Bridges," one word. They finish dinner mostly in silence after that, but it's a different silence. Less like a wall, more like weather. When she goes upstairs, Marco is in the hallway. He looks at her with something she hasn't seen from any of them before. Respect, or the beginning of it. She doesn't trust it yet. Sofia Ferrantes shows up at the estate unannounced, and Celeste lets her in. She is everything Elena is not on the surface: wealthy, connected, polished, and deeply furious that Damien married someone else. Over tea, Sofia is pleasant to Elena's face and vicious underneath every sentence. She mentions the arrangement that should have happened. She mentions how temporary some marriages are. Elena listens with a pleasant smile. After Sofia leaves, Elena goes to her room and makes 3 phone calls. The retired judge, a financial journalist she met once at a conference, and a woman named Dr. Pham, a forensic accountant. She doesn't explain why yet, but the pieces she's been quietly gathering for weeks are starting to form a shape. During a routine walkthrough of the estate's wine cellar, something Marco offered as a casual gesture to make her feel more at home, Elena notices a door. Not locked, just overlooked. Behind it is not another cellar. It is a room with filing cabinets, a decommissioned server tower, and a single framed photograph on the wall of Damien at around 16 years old, standing next to a girl with his same dark eyes. Lena. Elena stands very still. This is not a storage room. This is a shrine. She doesn't touch anything. She backs out slowly. But when she turns around, Damien is standing at the top of the cellar steps, looking down at her. The look on his face is not anger. It is raw exposure, the look of a man whose locked room just got opened. Neither of them speaks for a very long time. He tells her that night, not because he wants to, because she already knows enough, and he would rather control how she hears the rest. Lena was killed in a staged accident orchestrated by the Ferrante family, Sofia's family, as a message to the Crows during a territory dispute 6 years ago. Damien was 24. He spent 3 years building enough power to ensure the Ferrante family could never touch his family again. The peace deal, the marriage that was supposed to happen between him and Sofia, was his mother's idea, not his. He never agreed to it. His father's debt arrangement with the Vasquez family was his way of escaping it. Elena stares at him. You used my uncle's debt to get out of marrying the woman whose family killed your sister. He doesn't deny it. She says, you could have just told me. He says, I don't tell people things. She says, I noticed. A financial journalist Elena called publishes a story. Not damaging to Damien, not yet. It is a profile of Elena herself, the orphaned niece of a debt-ridden businessman who quietly earned a degree in urban policy, managed a nonprofit for 2 years, and now sits at the center of one of the city's most powerful families. The story is warm, flattering. It makes Elena real to the public, a person with a history, a mind, a life before the Crowe name. Damien sees the article over breakfast. He looks at her over the paper. She pours her coffee calmly. He says, you planned this. She says, I plan everything. He says nothing. But that evening, she finds a set of keys on her desk, car keys, and a note in handwriting she doesn't recognize yet. The East Gate code is 1107. She looks up Lena Crowe's birthday, November 7th. Celeste sits Elena down privately and delivers an ultimatum. Leave quietly, accept a financial settlement, and dissolve the marriage. Or Celeste will find a way to have the blind trust clause legally challenged on the basis that Elena coerced Damien's signature. Elena listens to the whole thing. Then she opens her phone and plays back the audio of the conversation she just recorded. That's attempted coercion to dissolve a legal contract, Elena says. Which, ironically, is exactly what you're accusing me of. Celeste stares at her. Elena stands up. I'm not leaving, but I'll make you a different offer. Stay out of my way, and I'll stay out of yours. She walks out. Her hands are completely steady this time. Dr. Pham, the forensic accountant Elena hired, delivers her initial findings. Elena has been quietly untangling the Vasquez business license, its true legal value, its hidden subsidiaries, and most surprisingly, a dormant charitable foundation attached to it that her uncle never activated. Elena plans to activate it. The foundation, under her control as the sole remaining Vasquez heir, could legally channel funds into community development projects in the city's lower districts, the same neighborhoods her mother grew up in. Damien's lawyer flags it. Damien calls her into his office, the first time she's been invited there. He asks what she is doing. She tells him exactly. He sits back. You're not trying to take money from me, she says. I never was. He looks at her for a long moment. Then what do you want? She says. I want to do something real. It's the first conversation they've ever had where they are both completely honest. It lasts 2 hours. Marco asks to speak with Elena alone. He confesses that he was the one who told Celeste about Elena's notebook in the early weeks, and that he has been reporting on her movements to Damien's mother. He expected anger. Elena says, I know, I've known for a while. He stares at her. She says, I've been feeding you information for 3 weeks, Marco. Everything Celeste thinks she knows about me is what I chose for her to know. He sits down slowly. Then he says, there's something you don't know. The clause you added to the contract. Someone inside the Ferrantes family got a copy of it before you signed. Sophia didn't show up here by accident. She was sent to find a way to get Damien to breach it. Elena and Marco work together for the first time. The goal, let Sophia believe she has found a breach, a moment where Damien treats Elena in a way that violates the contract, so the Ferrantes family will expose their involvement in the contract manipulation, which is itself illegal. They stage a dinner argument between Elena and Damien, not a real one, but designed to look like Damien coldly dismissing her in front of a witness Sophia planted on the staff. Damien agrees to participate. It is the first time Elena sees him act, and she realizes he is better at it than she expected. Afterward, alone in the hallway, they almost laugh. Almost. He looks at her in a way that makes her look away first. She doesn't write about that in any notebook. Sophia's lawyer contacts the Ferrantes family with the breach footage, but Elena's forensic accountant was already tracking the digital trail, and when the footage is submitted to a court-appointed contract arbitrator, the metadata reveals it was sent from a Ferrantes-owned server. The attempt to manufacture a breach becomes proof of the Ferrantes family's illegal involvement in tampering with a legal contract. Elena releases the documentation to the financial journalist. The story breaks nationally. The Ferrantes family is exposed, not just for the tampering, but through the paper trail Dr. Pham uncovered for financial crimes connected to the Syndicate war 6 years ago that resulted in Lena Crowe's death. Damien reads the story alone in his office. When Elena passes the open door, he says, without looking up, "You did that." She says, "We did." He still doesn't look up, but she sees his hand tighten on the newspaper. It happens quietly. Celeste does not apologize, she is not capable of it, but she stops obstructing. She fires Irina. She removes herself from the room when Elena is meeting with city officials at the estate. And one morning, Elena finds her standing in the East Wing hallway outside her room. Celeste says, "Lena would have liked you." Then she walks away. Elena stands in the hallway for a long time after. She does not know what to do with kindness that comes too late and without wrapping. She puts it in the place she keeps things she has not finished understanding yet. The Vasquez Community Trust launches publicly. The city covers it. 4 council members attend. Elena speaks clearly, plainly, without notes. She talks about her mother, a woman who grew up in one of those neighborhoods, who cleaned houses to pay for her daughter's education, who died when Elena was 9 and left her with nothing but the drive to matter. The room is moved. Damien is in the back of the room, uninvited, unannounced. She sees him when she finishes speaking. He doesn't avert his eyes. She doesn't either. This time, he looks away first. A reporter asks Elena directly on camera whether her marriage to Damien Crowe is real or transactional. The room goes quiet. Elena is quiet for 3 seconds. Then she says, "Every marriage starts as a transaction of some kind. What matters is what you build inside of it." The reporter pushes, "Do you love him?" Elena smiles. "I'll let you know when I've finished deciding." The clip goes viral. Damien watches it on his laptop in the study. Marco comes in, sees the screen, and leaves without saying anything. Damien watches it twice more. That night, Elena comes to the study to return a book she borrowed without asking. Damien looks up. She sets it on the desk. "I read the chapter on suspension bridges," she says. He says, "They're the most honest structures humans build. All the tension is visible." She nods slowly. "Good night, Damien." "Good night, Elena." First names, both of them notice. A man arrives at the estate, uninvited, nervous, elderly. His name is Thomas Vey. He was the lawyer who originally structured her uncle's debt to the Crowe family. He has come because Elena's forensic trail has circled back to him, and he is afraid. He tells her something she didn't know. Her uncle's debt was manufactured, artificially inflated through document fraud, with the help of someone inside the Vasquez family's own business. Someone who wanted the family's license absorbed by the Crowes. Someone who, according to Thomas Vey's trembling voice, was paid by the Ferrantes family to create the conditions that brought Elena here. Elena sits with this for a long time after he leaves. Her uncle didn't fail. He was pushed. She was placed here. And suddenly the clause she added, the one everyone thought was her clever act of self-protection, looks less like a defense, and more like the only move in a game she was put into without knowing the board. She goes to him that same night, tells him all of it: Thomas Vey, the manufactured debt, the Ferrante connection, the possibility that their entire situation was engineered. She watches his face as he understands that he may have been manipulated into this marriage just as much as she was. She waits for anger. Instead, he is very still. Then he says, "Does that change anything for you?" She says, "It changes the origin. It doesn't change what happened after." He looks at her for a long time. Then he says, "What did happen after?" She says, "I decided to stay, not because of a contract, because I looked at you and saw someone worth the trouble." The silence that follows is the loudest thing in the room. Then Damien Crowe, who has not touched another person in gentleness in 6 years, reaches across the desk and takes her hand. He holds it like it is something that could break. She does not pull away. Elena calls her retired judge friend and initiates a process she planned months ago but hoped she wouldn't need. She has the original contract amended, not dissolved, amended. The new version removes the clause, not because she no longer needs protection, but because she no longer wants a contract to be the reason he treats her well. She sends Damien a copy before filing it. He reads it in his car outside a meeting he is late to. He sits there for 20 minutes. When he walks into the meeting, Marco says he looked like a different person. That evening, the estate dining table is set not by staff instruction, but by Damien himself imperfectly, with the candles slightly crooked. Elena sits down across from him. She does not mention the candles. He does not mention the clause. They eat. They talk. They stay at the table long after the food is gone. 6 months later, the Vasquez Community Trust has funded 11 projects across 4 city districts. Thomas Vey has given a sworn testimony. The remaining Ferrante legal exposure collapses their political influence in the city. Celeste Crowe attends a trust ribbon-cutting event, standing in the back, silent, wearing a modest coat. Damien stands beside Elena at the podium and says 4 words to the gathered crowd. She did all this. Elena squeezes his hand once. Later, a journalist asks her if she has any regrets about how everything started. She thinks of the altar, the cold church, the second-hand dress, the folded paper in her bouquet. She thinks of the clause she added, not out of spite, but out of the last reserves of a girl who had nothing left but her own mind. She says, "Not one." And she means it in every possible direction, for what she survived, for what she built, and for the man who signed the paper and didn't know yet that the real clause was her.